Thank you for joining us. You know, sometimes in this business, it's better to be lucky than good. And we were lucky enough to have booked as our guest this week Congressman Seth Moulton from the 6th District north of Boston. Since 2015, he's represented that district. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and a decorated Marine Corps veteran in his own right. And this is a good week to have you here because there's a lot of news involving our military. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good to be here.
So have you been in touch with any of your current or former military contacts? And if so, how are they reacting to the exposure of classified information about a U.S. military operation on an unauthorized and unsecured chat?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of them have reached out to me in the last few days. They're disgusted, and the ones who are still on active duty, I think, are honestly wondering how are they expected to lead their troops? How are they expected to make sure that their Marines or soldiers or airmen or sailors actually follow the rules to keep our nation safe when the top guy in the Department of Defense refuses to do so and has zero accountability for his own behavior?
Do you want him out?
Yes. He absolutely should resign.
Yeah.
And there's really three options here. The honorable thing to do, the right thing to do, is to resign, because you've lost all moral authority to tell people in your command to follow orders, basic orders that you're unwilling to follow yourself. But the second option would be to say, yes, I really screwed up. Here are the things I am going to do and we're all going to do to make sure that no one ever makes this mistake again. He's chosen the third option, which is just to lie. Lie to the American people, lie to the troops he leads, just be completely dishonest about what happened.
One thing about the chat that occurred, the transcript was published, of course, that I feel like it has been a little under-discussed is Vice President Vance disparaging President Trump's understanding of foreign policy. And maybe he doesn't understand, you know, how this jives with the European agenda, and then also his derogatory comments about our European allies. What do you make of that?
I think that's just the truth. I mean, look, J.D. Vance is someone who clearly had beliefs that he put to the side so that he could be a sycophant to Donald Trump. He wrote a book that's totally inconsistent with his policy today. He called Trump the worst thing on earth. I mean, he actually made comparisons to Hitler, and then he said, oh no, I'm going to do whatever he says. I'm going to be his lapdog because I want a job in the administration. And by the way, Vance is not the only person who's done this. You know, my closest friend when I was elected 10 years ago was Elise Stefanik. Why? She's a Republican, but we had a lot of mutual friends from Harvard, and she was the most moderate Republican, someone that I really wanted to work with to do some things across the aisle. So we would get lunch together and whatnot. She bears zero resemblance to her old self. As soon as Trump came on the scene, she became the biggest hypocrite in Congress, completely forgetting all her old beliefs, and by the way, her old friends as well. Some mutual friends who don't even talk to her anymore, because she just became a sycophant for Trump. So that's what this whole class, this whole generation of Republicans is doing, and Stefanik and Vance are right at the head of that class.
Well, before we move on to some more domestic topics, where is all this heading with regard to our foreign policy? What is going on here?
I think what Americans need to understand is that for all the threats that the Trump administration has for us right here at home. I mean, cutting everything, slashing the federal budget. Right here in Massachusetts, massive cuts to healthcare, to education, to research dollars. I mean, all these things that are going to really hit home. I go to the VA for my health coverage, John. Like, we're going to start seeing veterans dying on waiting lists again because Musk doesn't care about vets, Trump doesn't care about vets. They're just slashing the VA. But for all those domestic problems, I've always said that the greatest threats of a second Trump administration are the foreign policy ones, because those are the ones that could literally start a war. Those are the ones that could be existential for America. Trump is weak on China. That invites an invasion of Taiwan that could literally lead to a massive war in the Pacific, a World War III. He's weak on Russia, which is inviting Putin to not only run over all of Ukraine, but to go to some European countries, perhaps NATO countries next. He's weak on terrorists. He's just weak across the board. And that's very dangerous because it's inviting our enemies to take advantage of us.
Congressman, it does seem that we might be approaching a constitutional crisis in which the executive branch starts defying court orders. They've already been playing it kind of fast and loose, not to mention going after law firms that sue them. If that happens, the defiance of a court order, what, if anything, can be done about it? Will it just, even if it goes to the Supreme Court and they rule in favor of the judiciary, what can really be done about it?
Well, it's time for Congress to actually do its job. And I mean, not to sort of bring us back to elementary school, but we do have this three-part government, and if one branch is out of line, in this case the executive, then the other two branches are supposed to put a check on that power. The judiciary is trying to do it, but that's why the executive under Trump is trying to undermine the judiciary. Meanwhile, Congress, the legislative branch, is just completely out to lunch under Republican leadership. Republicans control the House and the Senate, so it's very hard for Democrats to do anything without Republican support. I mean, there's almost nothing we can do, although I'll tell you what I'm doing is trying very hard behind the scenes to get Republicans to stand up and do their job under the Constitution. We've basically, in the Congress, just forgotten about the Constitution under this Republican speaker, because Congress is not controlling the power of the purse. We've just offloaded that to Elon Musk. Congress is not providing a check on the executive. We just let Trump get away with whatever he wants to do.
So you're trying to get Republicans to stand up?
Well, it's the only thing you can do.
Well, what's the feedback from them?
I mean, look, I had a conversation with a Republican yesterday morning, like 6:45 in the morning, and he said, look, Seth, I respect you. I respect your perspective, so I'll think about it. And that's about as positive as it gets.
What were you asking him to do?
I was asking him to stand up to Pete Hegseth.
Oh, okay.
And be honest about the impact on our troops and their safety.
They're just afraid of getting bounced by a Trump-backed primary opponent?
They're just all afraid of Trump. They're just scared. They know the right thing to do. The vast majority of them know the right thing to do. And what's lacking is some just basic political courage.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Democrats. What went wrong with the Democratic message last fall, and what's the plan to fix it?
Well, there's a long answer to this question because a lot went wrong. I mean, this should have been the easiest election for us in history. We were running against a convicted felon with a party in disarray. What Democrats showed is that the majority of Americans don't trust us across the country, because we should have cleaned up from President of the United States down to school board in every race that there was. But we didn't. We've lost touch with a lot of Americans. And what I've heard people say is, look, Seth, I know this guy's crazy talking about Trump, but you guys are so out of touch. The Democratic Party, you stand on this pedestal and preach and scold and tell people if you don't agree with us that you're not only wrong, you're bad people. So we've really got to change that attitude in our party.
Please give me an example of one issue in which Democrats could start to reclaim that trust.
Immigration. You know, for years, we just denied that there was a problem. We said, oh, it's not a big deal at the southern border. Well, it is a big deal. It is a problem. I mean, Trump was right to identify it as a problem. Now, his solutions are horrific, unconstitutional, lawless. I mean, what he's doing down the street with his Tufts student, I mean, that reminds me of the Gestapo. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. This is horrific. But part of the reason he's been able to get away with this is because Democrats didn't have an alternative plan. We didn't stand up with a plan to solve immigration ourselves that we could really sell effectively to the American people when half of our party is denying that it's even a problem.
I'm going to take an extra minute of time here to ask you about something you said in a recent interview. You said, I don't think we should be so focused on the outrage at what President Trump, is doing. Because guess what? People elected him. A majority of Americans elected him to do what he's doing. So let's actually focus on the places where he's not delivering, end quote. I'm a little confused. Which is it? Fight him? Or
absolutely fight. I think Democrats need to be doing two things fundamentally. Standing up as strong as possible to Donald Trump. That's why you see, I'm not afraid to call him a coward when that's how he behaves. I'm not afraid to call him a traitor. Just tell it like it is and call him out. But we also need to reform our party. And part of reform for our party is showing a good path forward, showing that we have a solution to these problems, that we can be the party of government reform. We're just not going to take a chainsaw to the government like Elon Musk, that we can be the party of a strong national security. We're not going to deny the problems at the southern border, and we're going to show that we stand up for the troops and our veterans. Democrats haven't been known for that, but let's make that case to the American people, and we will be the party of a strong economy while he's wrecking our economy with his tariffs.
Other than going on TV and talking about it, how do you do that when you're out of power in all three branches.
You recruit new leaders, and that's what I'm doing with my Serve America organization.
Okay.
Our win rate in the last election, when Democrats lost across the board, was 89%, John, and this was in some of the toughest House and Senate races in the entire country. So we have a winning formula. We're going to recruit a new class of candidates. Back in 2018, the last time Trump controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate, Serve America candidates accounted for more than half the seats we flipped in the entire U.S. House of Representatives. So look for us to lead the way to winning again.
Thanks for being here, Congressman. Come again soon.
John, thanks for having me.